Alice Martin was only 8 years old, yet she had already faced more challenges than most people encountered in a lifetime. She was born prematurely at a hospital in Houston. Complications during her birth affected her motor skills, leaving her reliant on a wheelchair. Despite these obstacles, Alice's spirit remained as bright as the sun. In their modest home on the outskirts of the city, her laughter often filled the house, a testament to her resilience and her unwavering love for her parents, Kelvin and Serena. Kelvin, a hard-working mechanic at a small auto repair shop downtown, often came home with grease-stained hands and a weary smile. He adored his daughter and did his best to provide for the family, even though financial stress was a constant companion. Serena, on the other hand, has temporarily put her dream of becoming a nurse on hold. This is to look after Alice full-time. Her days were consumed by therapies, doctor appointments, and homeschooling. The strain was evident in the lines on her face and the weariness in her eyes, but her love for Alice never wavered. One chilly December evening, the family sat around their small dining table in the warm, cozy kitchen. The aroma of Serena's homemade chicken pie, a family favorite, filled the air. Alice, her golden hair braided, giggled at one of her father's silly jokes, but as the laughter faded, Kelvin's expression grew serious. He set down his fork, and his usually warm voice carried a hint of hesitation. "I've been thinking, Alice deserves something. Someone who can bring joy to her life. Someone who can be there for her when we can't." Serena looked up from her plate, her brows furrowed. "What do you mean, Kelvin? We're always here for her." "I know," Kelvin said, glancing at Alice, who was now watching them with curious blue eyes. "But I've been thinking about getting her a horse, a companion, who can bring happiness to her in ways we can't. There's a place that connects families with miniature horses. These horses are trained to be companions for children with special needs. I think it could be wonderful for Alice." Serena's eyes widened. "A horse? How could we take care of a horse? Our lives are already so busy, Kelvin." Alice's head shot up, her eyes lighting up at the mention of a horse. "Mom, can I have a horse? I'll take care of it." Kelvin smiled gently at his daughter. "It might not be a young horse, but maybe an older one. A true friend for you. A best friend." Serena sighed, running her fingers through her long blonde hair. "What are you trying to do, Kelvin? But we need to be realistic. A horse is a big responsibility." "I know," Kelvin replied firmly, "but I've done my research. There's a shelter downtown that connects families with horses. They train the horses specifically for children with special needs. I think this could be a huge step for Alice." Serena remained silent, her gaze shifting to Alice, who sat still, clutching her fork tightly, her eyes filled with excitement and hope. It was rare to see her daughter so enthusiastic about something. Serena's heart softened. "I don't know," Serena whispered. "I just don't want to get Alice's hopes up too much. We haven't promised anything yet." Kelvin gently reassured his wife. "Let's visit the shelter and see what they have to say. If it doesn't work out, we won't pursue it. But I truly believe this could help Alice. She needs something. Someone to give her hope in a way we can't." Serena leaned her head against his shoulder, her doubts gradually giving way to the possibility that this could mean so much to their daughter. "All right," she said softly. "We'll visit the shelter, but no promises." Kelvin kissed her forehead. "That's all I ask." That night, as Alice lay in bed, her small room aglow with the light from her favorite night lamp projecting tiny stars onto the ceiling, Kelvin and Serena sat together on their cozy but cluttered living room couch, a reflection of their busy lives. Kelvin took Serena's hand, his calloused fingers rough against her soft skin. "You know, this is a big step," he said gently, "but I truly believe this could help Alice. She needs something to hope for, a friend we can't replace." Serena looked at him, feeling the weight in her heart. After a moment, she sighed and rested her head on his shoulder. "We'll try, but no promises." He was always a man of action, and when he made up his mind, he put his heart and soul into it. This time, it wasn't just about a horse. It was about giving Alice the chance to experience genuine friendship and perhaps a spark of independence. Kelvin spent his lunch breaks at the auto shop searching for horse training centers on his phone, and he discovered a place downtown specializing in pairing horses with families. It wasn't far from his shop, and they even had a program for children with disabilities. The more he researched, the more convinced he became that this was the right path for their family. That evening, Kelvin approached Serena, who was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, the steady sound of the knife meeting the cutting board filling the small space. Leaning against the counter, he said, "I found a place that might be perfect. They specialize in helping families like ours." Serena paused, the knife suspended in her hand. "We'll see, but I'm still not sure about this. What if it doesn't work out? What if the horse isn't a good match for Alice?" Kelvin reassured her. "That's why this place is special. They don't just match horses based on personality, but also on the family's needs. They even have trainers to help the horses adjust." Serena sighed, wiping her hands on a towel. "I just don't want Alice to get attached and then something goes wrong. You know how sensitive she is." "I know," Kelvin replied gently. "But we both want the best for her, and this could be a life-changing opportunity for her. Don't you think so?" Serena looked at him, worry mingled with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We'll do this together, right?" "Yes," Kelvin said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll do this together." The following Saturday, the family climbed into their old truck and headed to the horse training center. Alice could barely contain her excitement, though Serena still harbored lingering doubts. The training center was a sprawling area with stables scattered throughout. Inside, the air was filled with the sounds of horses neighing and the scent of hay mixed with earth. A friendly woman named Laura greeted them as they entered. "Welcome to Hope Horse Training Center," she said with a warm smile. "What brings you here today?" Kelvin stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Alice's wheelchair. "We're looking for a horse for our daughter, Alice. A gentle horse, maybe an older one, to be a companion for her." Laura smiled, her gaze softening as she looked at Alice. "You've come to the right place. Let me show you around." As they walked through the stables, Alice's eyes sparkled with wonder. Some horses neighed loudly, while others simply watched quietly. Serena stayed close to Alice, as protective as ever. Kelvin asked Laura about the temperament and history of each horse. Finally, they stopped at the last stall. Inside was a chestnut horse with a glossy coat, amber eyes, and a calm demeanor. As they approached, the horse slowly walked over and stood still, its tail swishing gently. "This is Lucky," Laura introduced. "He's about 9 years old, very intelligent and calm. He came here after his previous owner passed away. He's had basic training." Kelvin crouched and extended his hand through the bars. Lucky sniffed his hand gently before giving it a lick, his tail wagging faster. Alice leaned forward, her voice filled with awe. "He's beautiful." Laura smiled. "He's a special horse. I think he'd be a great match for your family." They moved to the outdoor arena, where Lucky was released to interact with Alice. The horse approached her carefully, then gently lay down beside her, resting his head on her lap. Trembling, Alice reached out to stroke his smooth coat. "Hello, Lucky," she whispered. "I'm Alice." Serena and Kelvin exchanged emotional glances. Serena knelt beside Alice, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Alice looked up at her parents, her face radiant with a wide smile. "I think he's perfect," she said. Serena held her breath, her eyes brimming with tears. Her worries melted away as she witnessed the bond forming between Alice and Lucky. Laura spoke softly. It seems Lucky has found his family. Kelvin nodded, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, I think he has. That day, as they signed the adoption papers, Kelvin couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just a new chapter for Alice. It was a new chapter for all of them. As they drove home with Lucky, Alice's laughter echoed throughout the truck. Kelvin knew they had made the right decision. The drive home from the shelter was a mix of excitement and apprehension. Lucky, the strong and majestic horse, stood calmly in the truck bed, his imposing figure effortlessly sharing space with Alice's wheelchair. Serena sat in the passenger seat, quietly observing the scene. A part of her couldn't shake the worry. What if Lucky accidentally hurt Alice? Could they handle having a horse in their lives? When they drove up the path leading to the house, Lucky perked up his ears, sniffed the air, and observed the new surroundings. Their home was modest but cozy, a single-story house with a small front yard and a ramp leading up to the front door, an addition Kelvin had built himself to make it easier for Alice to come and go. As Kelvin opened the car door, Lucky gracefully jumped out, the leash held firmly in his hand. Alice eagerly asked, "Where will he sleep? Does he like toys? Can I feed him step by step?" Kelvin chuckled as he pushed her wheelchair up the ramp into the house. Serena, still hesitant, watched as Kelvin removed Lucky's leash, allowing him the freedom to explore. Lucky walked cautiously, sniffing around. Its tail wags gently as it gets used to its new space. Eventually, Lucky approached Alice's wheelchair and sat down in front of her as if awaiting instructions. Alice beamed, extending her hand. "Welcome home, Lucky." Lucky responded by gently nudging her hand with his nose, making Alice laugh. Serena couldn't deny the bond between them, as if Lucky instinctively knew he was there for Alice. That evening, the family gathered in the living room. Kelvin spread fresh hay in the small stable he had prepared. Alice clapped excitedly at the sight of Lucky enjoying himself. "Can I feed him dinner?" Alice asked, looking up at her parents. Kelvin nodded and handed her a small carrot. "Hold it tight. Lucky will be very gentle." Alice maneuvered her wheelchair toward the stable and held out the carrot to Lucky. The horse slowly approached the stable, sniffed the carrot, and carefully nibbled it, as if fully aware of Alice's delicate hands. Serena observed the scene closely. Her worries began to fade. "He's really good with her," she quietly admitted to Kelvin. Kelvin put his arm around her shoulder and whispered, "I told you this could work. Just look at her." Serena glanced back, her eyes softening, and nodded. "It's been so long since I've seen her this happy." The next morning, Serena woke up early. Her routine involved brewing coffee and preparing breakfast. She was startled to see Lucky already awake, standing near the stable door as if keeping watch. When Kelvin came out rubbing his sleepy eyes, he smiled at the sight of Lucky. "He's already part of the family," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Serena nodded but said nothing. She was beginning to understand why Kelvin had insisted on adopting a horse. Alice woke up shortly after, her face lighting up when she saw Lucky waiting outside the stable, his eyes fixed on her bedroom. "Good morning, Lucky," she said cheerfully. Kelvin helped her into her wheelchair and wheeled her out to the yard, where Lucky eagerly awaited. During breakfast, Alice couldn't stop talking about all the things she wanted to do with Lucky. "Can we take him to the meadow near the forest? Will he like running around? Do you think he'll enjoy being groomed?" "We'll take it one day at a time," Alice said, her voice brimming with excitement. Serena, sitting nearby, responded in a softer tone, "I think Lucky will love all of that." As the family sat together, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, and the atmosphere in the house seemed to shift noticeably. Lucky was a new beginning, a source of hope and joy for a family that had faced so much adversity. Watching his daughter's radiant smile, Kelvin leaned back in his chair, finally feeling at ease. Lucky wasn't just changing Alice's life. He was transforming all of theirs. The following days brought significant adjustments for the Martin family as they welcomed Lucky into their lives. The strong, sleek horse quickly became an integral part of their home. Lucky moved with confidence, as though he fully understood his new role in Alice's life. Serena remained cautious and voiced her concerns. "Kelvin, what if something happens? He's such a big horse, and Alice is so small. What if he accidentally hurts her?" Kelvin took a deep breath, leaning against the kitchen counter, and reassured his wife. "I understand, but Lucky has done nothing but be gentle with her. He's proven he's good for Alice. We have to trust him and ourselves." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of Alice's laughter echoing from the yard. It was a rare and pure sound that dissolved any lingering doubts. Serena smiled, admitting, "Yes, Lucky might just be a vital part of our lives." Day by day, Lucky grew more confident in his new surroundings. He followed Alice wherever she went, instinctively protecting her. When Serena set up Alice's therapy mat in the living room, Lucky stood outside the yard, watching intently. "Do you think he'll help with therapy?" Alice asked, as she tried to reach for a set of colorful blocks on the mat. "I think he's already here to help," Serena replied, noticing Alice's newfound determination under Lucky's watchful eye. "Let's see if he'll join in." Serena picked up one of the blocks and placed it near Lucky. The horse curiously sniffed it before gently nudging it toward Alice with his nose. Alice's face lit up. "He's helping," she exclaimed with joy. "He might just be your new therapy assistant," Serena said with a soft laugh. Over the weeks, Lucky settled into his role as Alice's companion. His impact on the family was undeniable. Even Alice's therapists commented on her remarkable improvement in motivation and focus during sessions. One afternoon, as Kelvin was fixing a cupboard door in the kitchen, he happened to overhear Alice talking to Lucky outside. Her voice was gentle and sincere. "Do you think I'll be able to walk, Lucky? Mom and Dad say it's fine if I don't, but I want to try. Maybe you'll help me?" Kelvin paused, his hand still resting quietly on the screwdriver. Alice's words struck him, a reminder of her quiet determination. He looked out the window and saw Lucky standing beside Alice, his head nudging into her lap. The sight choked him up. That evening, Kelvin recounted the moment to Serena as they cleaned up after dinner. She talked to Lucky as if he could understand every word she said. Kelvin said, his voice growing quieter, "She wants to try riding one day." Serena paused from drying a plate, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "Do you think that's possible? I mean, possible?" she asked. Kelvin sighed, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I don't know, but if anyone can inspire her to try, it's Lucky." In a short time, even Serena, who had been the most hesitant, found herself drawn to the horse's gentle nature. The family had settled into a new routine, and Lucky quickly adapted to life in their home. Each new day began like any other. Alice was in the small yard, her wheelchair placed near the coffee table facing Lucky's small pen. Alice was working on a puzzle. Her slender fingers struggled to fit the pieces together. Lucky stood nearby, his amber eyes watching her every move. He seemed to sense her frustration as she struggled with a particularly difficult piece. "I can't do it," Alice muttered, her voice tinged with disappointment. She dropped the piece into her lap, her small hands curling into fists. Lucky's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. Slowly, the horse stood up and moved closer to Alice, nuzzling her. Alice looked up as Lucky approached, her expression softening. "Hello, Lucky," she said, her voice nearly a whisper. She reached out and Lucky responded by gently nudging her palm with his nose. Kelvin, who was adjusting a leg on the nearby table, glanced over. He saw Lucky, his head resting on Alice's lap, his gaze locked with hers as if saying, "Don't give up." "Alice, try again," Kelvin said gently, setting the tool down. "Lucky's here to help." Alice hesitated, her fingers hovering over the puzzle piece. "Do you think he knows?" "I'm sad." Kelvin smiled. "I think he knows, You just need a little encouragement." Encouraged by her father's words, Alice picked up the piece again. Her hand trembled slightly as she maneuvered it into place. Lucky remained completely still. His presence was a calming anchor. When the piece finally clicked into place, Alice beamed. "I did it!" she exclaimed. Her joy lit up the small yard. She turned to Lucky, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Thank you, Lucky." Lucky excitedly neighed. The bond between Alice and Lucky became unmistakably clear, and even Serena, who had been most anxious, found herself smiling more often after dinner. That night, as Alice drifted off to sleep, Lucky too settled peacefully in his pen. Serena and Kelvin stood at the window, silently watching. They saw their daughter change, happier and more confident. Serena whispered, overjoyed, "She's found what we've always hoped would come to her." Kelvin nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "Lucky gave her what we couldn't. This horse isn't just an animal, he's Alice's companion." Serena wiped away tears, overwhelmed by the scene, feeling the profound change in their daughter. In the weeks that followed, Lucky had changed the rhythm of Alice's daily life in ways the Martin family had not fully anticipated. Lucky's presence brought a new energy to the home, and a sense of purpose in everyone's lives. But perhaps it was Alice who flourished the most, once struggling with frustration and doubt, now showing an ever-growing determination in her actions. She began to dream, to push past limits, with Lucky always by her side. Alice's morning routine, once filled with resistance and complaints, had now become something she looked forward to every day. Lucky patiently waited by the stall door, whinnying loudly as soon as she came outside. "Good morning, Lucky," Alice would say cheerfully. She always insisted on holding Lucky's reins as her parents pushed her toward the stall. Her excitement made the whole family feel the fresh energy in the air each morning. The therapy sessions have had a major turning point. In the past, physical therapy sessions were a nightmare for Alice. But since Lucky came into her life, everything has changed. One afternoon, her therapist, Rowena, arrived as usual. A petite woman with a warm smile, Rowena immediately noticed the change. "It looks like someone is excited for today's therapy session, doesn't it?" Rowena said as Lucky ran up to greet her and received a gentle pat on the mane. "We have a new assistant now," Rowena laughed. Alice looked up at Lucky, who was standing next to her wheelchair, and said proudly, "Lucky helps me a lot. He always keeps an eye on me, making sure I don't give up." Kelvin and Serena stood nearby, exchanging glances, seeing Alice filled with enthusiasm. She had truly changed her approach to the therapy exercises, with Lucky always by her side to encourage her. Every time Alice bent down to pick up colorful rings from the yard, Lucky was close by, his eyes following her every movement. Each time she sat up, he gently nudged her as if cheering her on. "You're doing great, Alice." Rowena encouraged, "I've never seen you so focused. This is the first time I've seen you so full of life." At the end of the session, Rowena beamed. "Keep going, Alice. You're showing a big improvement in your coordination and strength. But more importantly, your attitude has completely changed. This is the strongest encouragement I've ever seen from you." Lucky had also begun to play an important role in nurturing Alice's independence. On days when Serena was busy with housework, Alice took care of Lucky herself. She diligently brushed his fur and even fed him every afternoon. When Serena was folding clothes in the bedroom, she heard Alice calling from the backyard, "Mom, come see." Serena hurried outside, finding Alice gripping the edge of the coffee table, her arm shaking from the effort. Lucky stood beside her, his eyes following her every move. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Serena asked, concerned. "I'm trying to stand up," Alice replied with determination. "Lucky's helping me." Serena knelt beside her daughter, her heart swelling with pride. "Alice, you're so brave," she said softly. "But remember, take it slow." "I know. Alice replied, smiling as she looked at Lucky, her horse. "But I want to try for him." Lucky's presence in the community became more and more noticeable. Step by step, Lucky became a familiar figure in the Martin neighborhood. On sunny afternoons, Kelvin and Serena often took Alice and Lucky to the nearby field. It was a spacious place with sprawling meadows and a trail for horseback riding. Alice enjoyed watching others ride, and with Lucky by her side, she felt more confident engaging with others. One day, a boy named Wyatt appeared, holding a small ball and a curious expression. "Can I pet your horse?" he asked. Alice hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "His name is Lucky," she said quietly but proudly. As Wyatt gently patted Lucky's neck, the two children began to chat. It was the first time Alice made a new friend outside of her family or therapy sessions. Serena stood at a distance, watching with teary eyes. "Lucky is working miracles," Kelvin whispered, squeezing her hand. "He's helping her open up to the world." As time passed, Alice's progress became more evident. Her doctors were amazed by her emotional and mental development. Even though her physical improvement was still slow, Alice became more confident and willing to try new things and connect with more people. One evening, when the whole family was gathered around the dinner table, Alice looked up and said, "One day I will ride a horse without anyone helping." Kelvin and Serena exchanged glances, their eyes filled with emotion. "We believe in you, Alice," Kelvin said, his voice steady, "and Lucky does too." One crisp Thursday morning, Serena took Alice to her regular checkup at the hospital. Alice seemed quieter than usual, her hands gripping her wheelchair tightly. "You're very quiet today, sweetheart," Serena said, looking at Alice through the rearview mirror. "I'm a little worried," Alice admitted. "What if Dr. Raymond says I haven't made any progress?" Serena took a deep breath, her voice gentle but firm. "Alice, you've come so far. No matter what Dr. Raymond says, we will always be proud of you. And so will Lucky." At the hospital, Dr. Raymond, who had been with Alice from the start, welcomed them with a warm smile. After the checkup, he was surprised to see Alice more confident, even as she tried to balance herself on the edge of the examination table. "That's fantastic, Alice," he said, his voice full of encouragement. "Your body is much stronger now." Alice hesitantly asked, "Do you think I can ride a horse by myself?" Dr. Raymond paused, thinking carefully before replying. "Alice, I can't promise anything, but with your determination and Lucky's support, I believe you can achieve things far beyond expectations." Alice's face was radiant with hope, and she was determined to try even harder. That evening, the whole family decided to throw a small party to celebrate Alice's progress. Kelvin focused on preparing the sandwiches in the yard, while Serena carefully made Alice's favorite dish, baked apple pie. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, and the soft sound of hooves on the brick floor echoed as Lucky slowly walked around the yard. When the family gathered around the outdoor table, Alice eagerly shared her appointment with Dr. Raymond. "He said I can do more than anyone thinks," she said, her eyes sparkling with belief. Kelvin raised his glass of lemonade high. "Here's to Alice, the bravest and strongest girl we know," Serena gently added, her eyes brimming with pride. After dinner, when everyone had gone to bed, Alice drifted off to sleep. Serena and Kelvin sat in the living room, their eyes on the photo of Alice with Lucky, bathed in warm golden sunlight. "Do you see it, Kelvin?" Serena quietly said, holding her cup of tea. "Alice has changed not only physically but also mentally. She's so much happier now." Kelvin nodded, gazing deeply at the picture. "I never thought a horse could make such a difference. Lucky has helped not only Alice but our whole family." Serena leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Maybe Lucky was meant to be with Alice." The next morning, Serena looked out the kitchen window and saw Alice and Lucky in the backyard. Alice was practicing using the reins to guide Lucky slowly through the obstacles Kelvin had built the day before. Lucky obeyed without hesitation, and each time Alice completed a task, she burst into laughter. Serena stepped outside, gently touching Lucky's mane and softly saying, "I was wrong to doubt having a horse. Lucky has brought us something miraculous." Alice smiled, her eyes shining brightly. "Not just for me, Mom. Lucky has helped our whole family." Kelvin then decided to build a small training area in the yard so Alice could practice with Lucky. When the work was completed, Alice couldn't hide her excitement. "Thank you, Dad. Lucky and I are going to have so much fun." Kelvin watched his daughter guide Lucky through the obstacles, moving slowly but skillfully. Alice's laughter filled the garden, overflowing with pride and happiness. One afternoon, while they were picnicking by the lake, Alice observed a group of children riding horses over the obstacles. She turned to her parents with a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Do you think I could ride like that?" she asked, her voice soft but full of hope. Kelvin and Serena exchanged a glance, their hearts aching with both love and concern. Kelvin spoke first. "We don't know, Alice, but what we do know is that you can do anything you set your mind to. You've come so far already." Alice nodded, her gaze turning to Lucky, who was grazing nearby. "As long as I have Lucky, I think I can do it." Serena gently placed her hand on Alice's shoulder. "And as long as you have us," she said, "we'll be here with you every step of the way." It was a home full of warmth. Alice gently took her parents' hands. "I'm so lucky," she said, "because I have both of you and Lucky." Kelvin and Serena looked at each other, their eyes misty with tears. "And we're lucky because we have you," Kelvin replied, squeezing Alice's hand. Lucky, sensing the emotion, walked over to Alice and gently nudged her hand. Alice laughed out loud, hugging Lucky tightly. The Martin family knew they had found something truly precious, love and unity that could overcome any challenge. An ordinary yet extraordinary day passed. Alice was practicing in the small yard near Lucky's stable. Serena sat reading a book, and Kelvin was busy trimming the horse's hooves. Lucky stood beside Alice, watching her every move. Over the past few weeks, Alice had become stronger, now able to stand on her own, something that no one had thought possible before. When Alice touched Lucky's mane, she giggled. "You're my best cheerleader," she said. Kelvin walked over, wiping his hands on a towel. "How's everything going?" he asked, his eyes filled with joy. Alice looked up, her face beaming. "Look, Dad, I did it." She touched the saddle on Lucky's back, holding on tightly. Serena looked up, her heart pounding. "Honey, are you sure you want to try?" Alice nodded, her eyes full of determination. "I want to ride Lucky." Kelvin exchanged a look with Serena. "All right," he said slowly. "Let's try, but we'll always be here if you need us." Approaching Alice, Kelvin stood ready to help if needed. Serena knelt beside her, her expression full of concern. In front of them, Lucky, Alice's loyal horse, lay on the ground, calm and focused as if sensing the importance of this moment. Alice gently placed her hand on Lucky's mane, her small fingers gripping the thick, soft hairs. "All right, Lucky," she whispered, her eyes shining with determination. Taking a deep breath, Alice began to push herself up. Her arms trembled with effort, her face flushed from intense focus. Lucky stood still, strong and steady, forming the perfect support for her to rise. Slowly, almost magically, Alice stood up straight. She swayed a little but managed to keep her balance. "I'm standing!" Alice exclaimed, her voice full of surprise, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks as she looked at her parents. "Mum, Dad, I can stand." Serena raised her hand to cover her mouth, tears flowing endlessly. "Oh, Alice," she whispered through sobs. "You're incredible." Kelvin stood next to her, his eyes bright with pride, one hand supporting Alice, the other gently patting Serena's shoulder. "You did it, my love. You're standing strong." The whole family stood still in that moment, overwhelmed with happiness. Lucky turned his head, his eyes soft as he looked at Alice as if sharing the joy with her. Alice bent down, wrapping her arms around Lucky's neck, choking on a sob. "Thank you, Lucky. I couldn't have done this without you." Kelvin and Serena stepped forward and embraced Alice tightly. The three of them shared that great moment together. Lucky neighed softly, tapping his hooves on the floor as if celebrating too. That evening, Kelvin and Serena called Alice's therapist, Rowena, to share the good news. "She's standing, Rowena," Serena said through her tears. "With Lucky's help, she did it." "That's amazing," Rowena responded, deeply moved. "Alice is truly extraordinary, and Lucky is such a great motivator. This is a major milestone, not just physically but mentally as well." The good news quickly spread through the family and friends. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all called to congratulate Alice. The love and support gave her and the Martin family even more strength. The next day, Kelvin and Serena threw a small party to celebrate Alice's achievement. A banner hung in the living room with the words, "You did it, Alice." Friends and neighbors came to join in the celebration, all amazed and in awe as they heard her story. "Lucky isn't just my horse, he's also my best friend," Alice said, her eyes shining as she looked at Lucky. The horse stood outside in the yard, looking inside the house, its tail flicking gently as if understanding her words, causing the whole room to laugh and clap. That night, Alice sat in her wheelchair by the window, her gaze turned towards Lucky's stable. "Today I stood, Lucky," she whispered. "One day I'll walk. I know I can." Lucky looked into Alice's room, its big eyes shining brightly as if trying to send Alice a powerful sense of belief. Kelvin and Serena stood by the door, looking at their daughter with eyes full of pride and hope. "Our little girl will do it," Kelvin said softly. Serena nodded, wiping away her tears. "And we will always be here for her." The next day, Alice began therapy with increased difficulty. She wasn't quite steady yet, but was trying to take her first steps. It wasn't a perfect step. Her balance wavered. But still, it was a step. The room was filled with cheers from Rowena, Serena, and Kelvin, all watching intently, holding their breath. "You did it!" Alice exclaimed, tears rolling down her face. "Wonderful, Alice," Rowena said, clapping her hands and smiling brightly. "Do you know what this means?" Serena said emotion as Kelvin placed his hand on their daughter's shoulder. "You are getting stronger every day. We are so proud of you, sweetheart. You've come so far." Alice wiped away her tears and smiled brightly, her eyes full of determination. "I will keep trying. One day I will walk beside Lucky without anyone's help." News of Alice's progress and her unique bond with Lucky quickly spread. In addition to the family and therapists, the Martin family received many messages from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had heard about her story. Many were inspired by Alice's determination and the special bond she shared with Lucky. One day, the local newspaper reached out and asked if they could feature Alice and Lucky in a segment on the impact of animal-assisted therapy. After some hesitation, Serena and Kelvin agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to share Alice's journey. The film crew visited on a sunny afternoon. Alice wore her favorite pink dress, excited yet nervous. "What if I say something silly?" she whispered to her mother. "You will do great," Serena reassured her, gently brushing a lock of Alice's hair away. During the interview, Alice openly shared her struggles and how Lucky had changed her life. "He's not just my horse," she said, her voice strong and confident. "He's my companion, the one who makes me feel braver." The footage aired over the weekend and received very positive feedback. People from all over reached out, sharing their own stories and expressing admiration for Alice's journey. Some even visited farms or therapy centers to meet and learn more about the impact of animal-assisted therapy. To celebrate Alice's progress, The family decided to organize a small picnic at the park where she once dreamed of riding Lucky. As the golden sunlight beamed down, Alice sat in her wheelchair beside Lucky, holding the reins tightly. "Can I try again?" She looked at her parents, her eyes filled with hope. Kelvin and Serena exchanged a proud glance before nodding. "Of course, darling. Take it slow." Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Alice took one step, then another. Each step was shaky, yet full of determination. When she reached her father, the group erupted in applause. Tears of joy streamed down everyone's faces. "That's amazing, Alice!" Wyatt, her new friend, shouted as he rushed to hug her tightly. "I'm not done yet." Alice smiled brightly. Her cheeks flushed. "I will keep practicing until I can take a walk with Lucky by myself." One quiet evening, when Alice was sound asleep, Serena and Kelvin sat together, reflecting on the journey they had been through. "Do you think about how we would be without Lucky?" Serena asked softly. Kelvin nodded, his gaze fixed on a photo of Alice and Lucky on the mantel. "I think about it all the time. Lucky isn't just a horse, he's part of our family." The Martin family knew that the road ahead would still be long, but with Lucky by their side, they believed that any challenge could be overcome. Alice and Lucky's story has shown us the power of determination and love, which can overcome any obstacle. If you have been inspired by this emotional journey, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss any of the amazing stories to come. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.